Steve Bannon. He's now known as a podcast host, a conservative figure, popular on the far right. But he's also someone we realized who was talking to President Trump in the final days of the Trump presidency, talking to President Trump even on January 5th, the eve of the insurrection, and saying to President Trump, based on our reporting, kill the Biden presidency in the crib. January 6th has to be a reckoning.
That, of course, the Washington Post's Robert Costa, one of the co-authors of the new book, Peril, here just last night, describing what they learned about Steve Bannon's actions ahead of January 6th. Well, tonight, Bannon is one of 4 Trump allies now being subpoenaed by the House committee investigating the insurrection. Here to talk more about it is Robert Gibbs, former Obama campaign senior advisor and White House press secretary under President Obama, and Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, former lieutenant governor of Maryland, and host of the Michael Steele podcast. Good to see you guys. So, Robert, Costa laid out Bannon. We saw Mark Meadows with the president on January 6th. So was Scavino, for that matter. These are the folks who have been part of his inner circle. So they know things, but will they comply, or more likely, as Chairman Benny Thompson put it, be recalcitrant?
Well, I think, Chris, there's no doubt, and you've seen this from the Republican Party's posture on investigating the entire insurrection, is they want nothing to do with this. They're going to delay. They won't participate. They'll do all these things. But I think your previous guest talked about the fact they're likely in some way to be compelled to deliver some testimony. And while I think Steve Bannon is maybe the most exciting name there, to me, the most interesting one is the former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. It is unimaginable that Mark Meadows wouldn't know everything that happened that day, every movement that Donald Trump made, and every update that was coming in or request from the Pentagon or from the FBI would have been funneled into the White House through the chief of staff's office. So he would know everything there was to know about that day, and I think he's going to be the most interesting witness.
So, Michael Steele, we have a couple of pieces of breaking news here that I want to ask you about. We just got a tweet from Maricopa County. You know, we're expecting this report on the review, whatever we want to call it, in Arizona. Here's what Maricopa County tweeted, their official account. The Arizona audit draft report from Cyber Ninjas confirms the county's canvass of the 2020 general election was accurate, and the candidates certified as the winners did, in fact, win. Almost simultaneously, this report in the Washington Post, I just mentioned it, that the Texas Secretary of State's office is announcing an audit of the 2020 election results after Trump called for one. I don't think we need to remind people he won that state.
Yeah. Small detail. He won Texas. Look, this is an absolute waste of taxpayer time and money. It's up to the citizens of those jurisdictions to express their outrage about it. The rest of the country just yawns because the reality remains the result that Maricopa County put out tonight. Hey, we called the election in November. We certified the election in November. All we see now is the same information coming back the exact same way. This idea, by the way, of a forensic electoral audit is a fiction. It doesn't exist in law. It is a waste of time. It is a waste of effort. The processes that are in place under current laws and subsequently revised laws, not in this last cycle, but leading up to this cycle, have ensured this process to be fair and complete in dealing with the kinds of things that, you need to do, canvassing and making sure that the ballots are where they need to be, et cetera. So all that we're seeing right now are Republicans affirming what the country learned and knew on November 3rd in that, succeeding few days after the election before the final announcement and certification of Joe Biden as president was made. So if y'all want to pay for it in Texas, y'all can pay for it. But
what is confounding, not that we're looking for any common sense in this, Robert, is the fact that we have history with this, right? They've done other audits. They found out that no, absolutely nothing was wrong, that the result of the election was indeed the result of the election, and yet somehow they keep going and keep claiming fraud and keep claiming, in the face of the facts, victory.
Yeah, I think in Georgia, we counted the presidential vote 3 times. Maricopa County counted several times, tested their machines, did a hand count. Look, this is, as Michael said, an enormous waste of time and energy, an enormous waste of taxpayer monies. And I think it's all done exactly for what your previous guest said. This is about raising money. This is about exciting the Trump base and the Trump partisans to continue to give money to people that are pushing the audit in Arizona. I mean, as you said, why on earth would we audit Texas? As a Democrat, I would concede Texas, right? Michael, as a Republican, they won Texas. We can set that aside. I don't know. Are we going to Oklahoma and Alaska next? I mean, we get it.
Maybe the question is, Robert, why aren't you contesting Texas?
Well, maybe I should. I don't know, but I think, but all kidding aside, I think, Chris, it's clearly done, to raise money to increase this tension that Donald Trump needs to have exist. But look, the problem with this is that it undermines everything, right? There are people that are just beginning to pay attention to some of these audit processes or just learning about it, and they're probably asking themselves, wow, was there something wrong? Why did it need to be audited? And so, again, it's this slow drip, drip, drip that withers away the foundation of what otherwise should be the strongest, most robust democracy on the planet. And
on a kind of parallel track, Michael Steele, I mean, there's the possibility of a government shutdown looming. And Aaron Blake wrote this today. The last quarter century has featured an increasing number of such standoffs, with Republicans generally seeking something from a Democratic president to rein in spending. In almost every case, though, Republicans wound up bearing most of the blame, and they rarely got much in the way of concessions to show for it. So can you explain why they keep playing this game?
Well, a lot of it is, to Robert's point, about money. It's about driving the base. It's about, trying to, given all the money that was spent during the Trump years and the growth of government during that period, now it's all about, we're fiscal conservatives and the Democrats are, wild, sort of drunken, folks out there spending money that people don't have. But at the end of the day, this story is going to play out the way it always has. There will not be a shutdown because the Republicans often get the short end of that stick. So why would you, if you're trying to set up 2022, you're not going to be able to do it successfully on this issue. You may be able to come at it on other things, $3.5 trillion in infrastructure spending or whatever. But on something like this that goes so fundamentally to that safety net that many of those Republican constituents need and have to access, whether it's Social Security, whether it's, assistance for their kids, food stamps, whatever it happens to be the party that's standing in the way of that, as the article says, has never turned out well for the Republicans. So why bite at that poisonous apple?
Yeah, there was actually a poll on this, I think, in August, and this is an important issue for 2% of the electorate. So it's also hard to see, just as a numbers game, how that works for them. Okay, Michael and Robert, you're staying with us. And coming up, we're going to talk about the politics surrounding the human drama that's still unfolding along the southern border when the 11th hour continues.